Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Harvey County Talk. As always, I'm your host, Lance Gormley. Our guest on the program today is Ben Meier, who is the Program Prevention Director for Meier here in Newton. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing great. Windblown.
Today is a windy day. Yes, yeah. It is. So thank you for coming out to the studio and sitting down and having a conversation with me. I really appreciate it. I think it was a little over a week, maybe a couple weeks ago. Sometimes time escapes me and get busy, but I was invited to go to a luncheon out at the Convention Center or the Meridian Center here in town, and just hear a presentation by about Stand and what you all have been doing, and I think it was just specifically Stand, but just pretty much it seemed to fall in line with what your job, or what I would assume your job would be consistent of. So you kind of came as I heard this presentation, and it was moving to me. The whole thing really was, not in I was wanting to cry way, but I was just very impacted by the forward thinking, the fact that this is something that has gained some traction. There's a lot of people that it takes to make it happen, and that takes a lot of networking, and you guys have just been successful in that, and are moving into final stages of being able to really put forth a plan, and I'll let you tell the story, but I was just amazed by it, and I thought, well, I got to get a hold of Ben and see if he'll come out and just tell the greater community who maybe didn't have a chance to get to the luncheon, or maybe see some blips here and there of what you guys are doing, but just don't know, right? Mm-hmm. For you to be able to give a real backstory on that. And that's Harvey County related, right? So you come out on the talks and just really we'll appreciate you first and foremost before we even get into this. But
thank you.
One thing I always do is before we get into the who of what you're doing, right? We're just the who are you, right? So I know a little bit about Ben. I know Ben's a local guy, but Ben, where were you born and grew up at? Where do you hail from?
That's a real short answer. I grew up here in Newton. I was born and raised Bethel Hospital. It's no longer there. That's what I'm told. At least I was delivered there. And then I grew up here. Usually when I tell people that, though, they're like, "Oh, did you know so-and-so, or when did you graduate?" And I didn't go to the public schools. I went to Newton Bible from kindergarten to 8th grade. I did go to public school 1 year in 5th grade. And then I went to Newton Christian and put them out of business. And no, my class was the last graduating class. Nice. And they were like, "Can't beat that." And so they closed. No, so they're closed now, but I went to Newton Christian, and then, that's pretty much, grew up here in Newton, loved it.
Yeah.
Small town.
Yeah. So you got the opportunity to go to Newton Bible. I hear lots of great things about Newton Bible. For anybody who's interested in today's environment of maybe having an alternative with a real Christian background and principled education system, Newton Bible is a place you should look up. Mm-hmm. So anything I've ever known about them or anything, they have a outstanding standing. They produce outstanding individuals. So they produced one in you, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah,
You can help
Shout
for
out to Newton Bible.
It's not like you would be like, well, you think about it and you mention that, it just makes me think that, those are probably small groups of people, right? Mm-hmm. And then being the last class of something, well, at least you don't have to say, well, my alma mater, or I'm alumni of this place. There's years to go here. This could turn into like, I don't maybe want to call myself whatever, fill in the blank. But yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So did you go to college or anything? So after you graduated, you decided to go to college. Where'd you go to college?
Yeah. So it was actually interesting. So my graduating class at Newton Christian was a class of 4. That's probably why I closed. It was dwindling, but we had a class of 4, and then I chose to go to K-State. We're a big K-State family. So I went to K-State, and everybody, when I announced when I told people in the community and in my school and stuff that I was going to K-State, they were like, "You're just going to be a number there." And I was like, "Thank goodness." No, it was, I just wanted a different experience going from a class of 4, a school of 13 at that point, to a school of thousands and thousands, and a lecture hall of 400 where I can just come and go to class. No one knows my name. It was fun. I loved K-State. I was panicked, super, super introverted, because I had a small class. But I was panicked going to a big school, not knowing that many people and like what to expect and stuff. But I was on a floor in the dorms with some really, really great guys, and they're like friends to this day, and they're exactly who God placed in my life and who I needed at that point. And yeah, it was fantastic. I love K-State.
Well, one thing that's awesome about going to college is that there's so many different people from so many walks of life who are all coming from different experiences, and then they get to be there together. And it's not like you can't find somebody that appreciates the same things you appreciate or wants to do the same things you want to do of all different categories, right? And so that's interesting that you mentioned like panic, right, going into it, and then to realize that after that experience, looking back, it probably just changed your whole worldview exponentially, didn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, what was I gonna say? Just lost my train of thought. And the bigness of it, like, you're never gonna be in a position where everybody's experiencing the same things. You're learning how to be an adult and everyone's the same age as you. That's just such a unique 4 years in everybody's life, I think, and so formative. So finding those core people, I think, is important and just a fun experience for me, at least.
Very cool. So when you went into college, what did you decide you wanted to do? Did you know what you wanted to do right away?
No.
Or was it?
No, like, definitely not. I was like, I have no idea. Everybody told me I should be a math teacher, and I would still love to do that, but I went in undecided, and then I decided to declare a major. Personal financial planning was my major originally. It's okay to change your major several times, because I did. But personal financial planning was what I declared, and then several months into that, several being like 2 months into that, I was like, I hate worrying about my own money. Why am I picking a career where I worry about other people's? And so I shifted a little bit. I knew that I wanted to help people. Like, I knew at my core that I needed something to fill my bucket, and the way I fill my bucket is helping other people. And so I shifted a little bit to family studies and human services. So family studies and human services is really like human development, relationships, sociology, a lot of sociology, some psychology. There's some social worky sort of things in there too. It qualifies you to know a lot, but not do a lot.
Yeah.
You kind of have to get a master's.
You have to figure out a way to apply it.
Yes. You kind of have to get a master's to do anything with it. I guess I'm speaking out of two sides of my mouth because I'm using it. But yeah, I realized then I declared that and stayed in that. And then my senior year, I was like, I cannot keep going to school financially or like mentally. I can't keep doing it. And so I just decided I was going to continue and get the degree. And then if I could get a job that I liked and could pay my bills and pay my student loans, then I would just stay there. So, and I did. And I didn't go to grad school. So my original plan was to be like marriage and family therapy, and don't think I'm cut out for that. So I'm glad I didn't do that.
That's a heavy load. That's a ministry. You know, whether any of your belief on it is a ministry when it comes to being involved, that intricately involved in people's lives and stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So you kind of, we mentioned getting a bachelor's in something that you need to, it's very broad. Let's say it gives you a lot of knowledge, and then you need to figure out, well, where can I make this employable? And from there, you came home, right? And I'm just interested, like, with the degree that kind of matches with what I'm going to assume is your day-to-day job, or that information is all relative and good and useful in being able to do what you do. But how did you find yourself first employed, let's say, at Meier? You came home. You're out from college. What was the first thing you did? Did you get creative?
First thing I did was get my wisdom teeth out.
That's always, that college must have been hard for you.
No, so I looked for jobs for a long time right before I graduated. It's hard. It's hard to find jobs. But I looked for something that I could get, and I moved back home. Thank you to my parents for allowing me to do that. But I moved back home and applied for everything that I could, and I ended up getting a job at the YMCA's in Wichita. So I worked at the Northwest Y. Shout out to Jacob Stein, who is the director of the Newton Y now. He actually hired me at the Northwest Y. So he gave me my first adult job, full time. So I learned to work full time there, and I was excited about the Y because it was sort of adjacent to what I at least wanted to do. It was helping people in some capacity. the why is very much about trying to help people accomplish their goals and become the most they can be.
Focus on youth.
Yeah, they do focus on youth a lot.
Yeah.
So I was also the youngest for a long time, for a long portion of my life. So I had absolutely no need or want or desire to work with kids.
Little brothers and sisters.
Yes.
I'm the baby.
I did have a little sister, but I was 13 by the time she was born. So I had been the baby of the family for a long time. I had no idea how to interact with kids. But I worked at the Y, and then the Newton Y had actually just broken ground when I interviewed. And in my interview, Jacob told me, he was like, you never know, when the Newton Y opens, maybe you can just step in over there. And at that point I was driving 45 minutes, 50 minutes to work. I was working evenings, so I would get home at 1 a.m. So I was like, let's do that. So I worked really hard to like prove myself that year. And then when the Y was ready to hire someone for Newton, they basically just brought me in and said, how you doing?
Yeah.
And they offered me that job. So I was able to kind of help open the Newton Y a little bit, which was really fun.
Very cool.
My community, the community I grew up in.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a part in bringing it here, but I had a part in like selling memberships and like getting everything set.
Ground floor.
Yeah.
Ground floor, opening that door.
Yeah. So I worked at the Newton Y for a couple years as the membership director. And then I felt like I needed, or I wanted more of a direct influence, more of a direct impact in people's lives, something that I could see. It was fun to, in my head, the Y can do so much more, but in my head I was like, me personally, all I can do as the membership director is help people afford the memberships. I can't help change their lives. I can't be more of an impact beyond financial. And I wanted that. So I applied lots of different places. It was like 9 months of applying and either getting like, we moved in another direction or something. And so finally I said, you know what, fine God, I'll just stay here. I'm going to stop applying. I'm going to delete Indeed or not get on it anymore or whatever. And I was like, I tried to be content with where I was at. And then, I did that for several weeks, probably a month. And then one night I got back into my email and I was like, apply.
It's like, I got to do something more. I love this place, but I got to do something more.
Yeah. And one of the apply nows, I guess, was Meier, and it was coalition coordinator. No idea what it was, but I was like, that sounds well, I'll just apply. And I think it was the next day or something. It was around 4th of July. The next day I interviewed with Des Martins, who is my boss, and she's just one of the greatest people I've ever met. She interviewed me, and even after the interview, I remember like getting in my car and calling my parents and saying, I don't really know what I just interviewed for. Like, I don't quite understand it. It was a coalition coordinator for our coalition. And I said, I don't know what it is exactly, but I want to be a part of it. The next day, Des called me with an offer. Because it was over 4th of July. Like, it happened really quick. So I had applied for 9 months and given up and let God take control, and then applied one night, interviewed the next day, and then got the position the next day. So within that amount of time, like just surrendering was cool. But from there, so I started with the coalition. So I started as a coalition coordinator. A month after that, we got a big federal grant that they had written. So then I was in charge of that federal grant, having never done coalition work or done grant work, anything like that.
Okay, now when you say coalition, just for the audience.
Yeah, because I didn't know.
What exactly, so when you're a coalition coordinator, kind of what was the job description? Maybe not, maybe a little bit strange at first, right? Because to me, I'm thinking, well, I'm kind of seeing where you're going, and usually that's something that happens on a ground floor. So there's a very broad thing they're trying to accomplish. And then it's your job to bring that into scope, be more narrow, and provide an impact.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I'm just going to say, I, for the audience, what was your job exactly?
Yeah. So maybe I should say, not a lot of people know what Meier is either. So,
very good. Okay, yes.
Meier. So Meier Inc. is the largest provider of substance use treatment in the state. So their focus is helping those who have struggled with addiction or have struggled with some sort of dependence. The prevention department that Des coordinated at that time, she was the director over it. The prevention department the story that we tell, I apologize if I'm not actually answering your question right away.
No, you are, absolutely.
The story that we tell with prevention is basically like, imagine that you're walking along like a riverbank, and you hear some screams and you look into the water, and there's a person that's struggling to stay afloat in the river and being taken downriver. So you jump in, you dive in, and you pull them out, and you make sure they're okay. Then you hear more screams, and you look in the water, and there's more people in the water. So you jump in, and you dive in, and that person that you saved also jumps in and has to pull some people out. So you're constantly pulling people out of the river, and finally somebody gets the idea, hey, why are these people in the river? Why are they falling in the river? And so they go upstream, and they realize the bridge is out, or there's a big hole in the bridge or something, and they're like, why don't we fix the bridge? So that's what we do in prevention, is we go upstream and we're like, what is causing all of this? Sure. There's nothing wrong with treatment. We need treatment. We need all of that funding. We need everything. We need what Meier does. But we also need the other piece of like, why don't we close this gap so that there's not so many people falling in the first place? Yeah. So in general, that's what prevention does. That's what our prevention department is. The coalition is a fancy name for a group of people that are focused on one goal. So
very cool.
Basically, we have leaders from all over the county and community members, parents, anybody that wants to be involved. Honestly, if anybody wants to be involved, that are jumping on board and trying to change big picture, like environmental things, trying to get messaging out there, educate people on what we're really focused on youth. So it's a drug-free youth coalition, Harvey County Defy, D-FY, all caps. People like to say, you can say DFY or whatever you want to say, but it's Harvey County Defy is the coalition, and basically we're focused on eliminating youth drug use, because we know that if we can keep kids, statistically, if you can keep kids from doing anything until the age of 18 even, they're 90% less likely to have a dependence on whatever substance. Yeah. So we're just trying to keep kids clean.
Well, and it's interesting, and I don't want to take you off track, but that was one of the things when I was there, we always, I mean, it's kind of common sense. I mean, when you think, well, if I prevent a kid from making a poor choice, then it's less likely that poor choice is going to affect them later on in life. Mm-hmm. That's the principle with everything. I make jokes about my own kids, like it's my job to keep them alive. I tell them this, it's my job for you not to make a decision that you don't understand the consequences of, ultimately. But it was staggering to understand the statistic that you just mentioned, which was that if we can literally prevent a youth that are at specific ages that we already know are hot ages, I guess if you want to call it. I don't know where they're first using, as it's mentioned, you know. Mm-hmm. Just run over that with me. I mean, I might be asking you to throw out some statistics. We don't have a chart here, so I'm picking your brain, Ben. But I mean, I just looked at that and thought, wow. I mean, that's incredible, just to realize what a targeted impact that stand is making, and what are some of the statistics behind that? Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're talking about is the little bit of brain science that I shared at that meeting.
Yes.
So to preface it, I guess the human brain, something I learned in college and actually applied, is the human brain develops until the age of 25. Some new research is showing even like 26 for guys like 28. So
a little slower.
Yeah, we're a little slow on the uptake. The second decade of life is where the majority of that takes place. That's where the most important, and the brain actually develops from the back forward. So the part right behind your forehead, the frontal lobe, develops last. And that part is the part that doesn't fully, it's not done until 25, 28. And that part is in charge of attention and decision making and thinking through long-term consequences and all of those things. So when you think about that, in that decade of life, kids can't think through their long-term consequences as well. Biologically, they just can't. Their attention span is not great. Also, TikTok doesn't help with that.
Any social media?
Yeah.
And so, you're watching on a social media right now, I'm sure.
True. Thanks for your support. So that second decade of life, that's all developing. So they can't, decision making isn't there quite yet. But because it's also developing too, if you add a substance to that, development is affected for the rest of their lives. Like basically the brain is developing into the permanent brain that it will be. It's pruning things that it doesn't need, and it's making sure that it gets what it does need. So when you're healthy, then you get a healthy brain. And when you add a substance into it, it actually can program the brain to need that substance for the rest of their life and make addiction that much harder. Yeah. Most of those people that have a dependence of some kind started in a younger year.
Yeah.
Probably that second decade of life. So I think the statistics that I shared, I don't know them, like I haven't memorized them, but it was alcohol specific, but it applies to all substances. So when a kid starts using alcohol or drinking alcohol when he's 13, he's 47% more likely to struggle with a dependence as an adult. When you put that off to 18, I think it goes down to 15% or something like that.
Yes, there's a huge drop, and then almost to nothing.
Yeah, and then 21, it was down to 9%.
Yeah.
So that's why we have a drinking age. That's why we have, that's why it's now tobacco is 21 now. Yeah. That's why we do what we do, because if we can get kids just to a point, either they will be developmentally prepared enough at that point that they will say, I don't need this substance, or they will not develop a dependence. They're less likely to develop a dependence. So really, it's not about, we hate drugs and alcohol and all of this stuff. It's more about let's just make sure that we can get kids healthy and get their brains healthy.
Well, I mean, there has to get, and I don't want to take it this way, but there has to be something to say for the fact that at least if we're keeping our children safe and get to the age that they need to be with the ability to make the choices that are long-term consequent choices with knowing the consequences, that then they choose that, right? Like if you're 25, I mean, I have heard people say before, like with T21 ordinance that came about and stuff like that, it doesn't.
That was us. Shout out to us.
Yeah, shout out to that, right? Controversial.
Yeah, it was a little controversial.
Well, it seems it's. But see, to me, even then, it's like I supported it 100% because I'm thinking, well, at what turn do we want to try to not encourage our children to make a decision? And it's not. I mean, nobody's affecting my choices, right? I mean, if I want to go and make poor choices that affect my body, soul, and mind, and then stand on that. Well, I guess in America we're allowed to be able to do that as a consenting adults, as we might call it,
and
or whatever.
But
with
agree
you,
with
like,
that.
yeah,
I agree with
I'm not like
the government shouldn't necessarily be involved in everything, but there's also protections that can be put in place to just keep people healthy.
Yeah. Well, and there needs to be something on the opposite side too of that, because when I was growing up, as ancient as I am, they would market to kids.
Yep.
They would market tobacco. They would market alcohol and these things where, it
and
was
that happened again. That's what happened with vaping. So
yes.
Juul. Really great,
right. Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't name drop companies.
Well, whatever.
Sorry about
it's
that.
Free speech and all rights reserved.
But there's a whole bunch of proof on the internet, and I'm pretty sure there's ongoing lawsuits and stuff still since they started in 2017, I think.
Yeah.
But they were using influencer marketing on social media, and who follows influencers? Yeah. Kids do. They know, because of all of this brain science, if you can get someone started before the age of 18, then you've got a lifetime customer. So it's you can have money for the rest of their life, even though it's probably going to be shorter.
Yeah. It's cryptic.
Yeah,
it's very cryptic,
and it's manipulative, and it's not.
And then you're manipulating children.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're causing bodily harm to them.
Yeah. Well, as long as I can make a couple bucks, I guess we come down to that. But that makes what you're doing so much more unique, Ben, because, I want to say that the last thing I heard about any kind of drug prevention in youth or anything in any kind of a community was DARE, right? And sad to say, although on the desire to affect change in youth and prevent them from using drugs, they get an A+. On the outcome, not so much, and it almost got to the point where, because they didn't revitalize or revamp or whatever they got to do with the program to be able to make it relevant to youth going forward, that didn't happen. And I'm pretty sure that DARE's non-existent for the most part anymore.
Yeah, DARE did get, there are actually a lot of schools still that we interact with that still do DARE.
Okay, so DARE exists.
It does.
Okay.
I believe that the majority of them, DARE has been a little bit revamped. We have a program that I believe was DARE that has been revamped, and it's called Keeping It Real. Don't love the name, but it's been way more evidence-based.
I love it.
It's been way more evidence-based, and some of the schools that still do DARE are using that curriculum. So it's been proven to work a lot better.
Do you think a lot of this, Ben, I mean, in your position, I'm asking more opinion or whatever, but just I know that with your education coupled with what you're doing, your occupation, and then finally moving into doing what you're doing with Meier as the coordinator for that period of time, and I know we've moved on and you're doing more as the program director, and we'll cover that here soon. But are you finding that a lot of youth maybe just honestly didn't know or understand that those were the consequences? I mean, is it because we live in a society, and I'm not bashing society, but where parents don't necessarily have those kind of conversations with their kids? If they were a parent that indulged at one point in time as a youth or made some poor decisions, they're not necessarily going to be forthcoming to tell their kids, hey, I did this, or whatever, because it might just make it appear as though, well, you're fine. You didn't, and then it's like, well, there's a lot there, right? There's a lot there. And I've always been keen and interested in wondering, like, how many adults are having these or actively having these conversations with youth in the form that you are, where people are actively working together to go out and make this kind of impact.
Yeah, so
I
think there were a lot of questions in that.
I know, I apologize. I rambled,
good.
Man. I apologize, but I'm interested.
Yeah, so I think that kids are a little bit uninformed. I think we're doing our best to try to mitigate that. I think that parents also struggle. Like, the problem is with social media and all the cultural everything that's happening. Everything changes every 6 months, probably, if not every day. And so it's hard to keep up. Like vaping, our kids were seeing it before there was data to prove that vaping was an issue. They were seeing it in their school, which is cool that we have kids that are in the school and can identify issues before the field catches up, basically. But at that point, there's been a whole bunch of use already, and a whole bunch of dependence. So one of the things we try to do is educate kids, and have kids educate kids, because they'll listen a little bit better. But we're also working on helping parents be equipped, because it's hard. Like I've done parent nights, just speaking about, like, this is the impacts of vaping, because it's what I heard about vaping when it very first started was, oh, it's just water vapor, it's fine. Like, there were people like doing it in the store, and like, oh no, it's just water vapor, you can't tell me I can't do this. I'm like, knowing what I know now, I would have been like, excuse me.
Very true.
No. So there's a lot of misinformation about whatever substance too. There is also the, like, well, I did it and I'm fine, or I would rather you do it under my roof where I can watch you, that sort of issue. Yeah. So there's some misinformation on that end from with parents. But it's also just, I'm not a parent, but I identify that if I was not in this field, if I was not in this working and seeing it every day, I wouldn't have no idea what's going on. And it would be really tough. It's really tough to have those conversations when you have no idea what's going on either. Like, kids know more than you at this point as a parent. So unfortunately, we've gotten to the point where kids are having to sort of step up and educate adults and parents.
Yeah, and it's an interesting. I mean, you said I asked a lot of questions. I think you answered the majority of them. Yes, I do. Well, so specifically, I know we got ahead of. I do this. I always try to get ahead because I'm interested and want to ask forwarding questions. But did we talk about how you became the program prevention director yet? Okay,
no.
So you're here. And you're working with Stan primarily, correct? At that time?
So I was working more with the coalition. So I was coalition coordinator. They're confusing. A lot of people in the community who have been a part of what we're doing still just call it all Stan, which is not correct, but it's not bad. Yeah. So
you did well on the Stan brand.
So we're trying to help, like. There's 3 entities essentially involved. So Meier is who I work for. Meier is the organization that hosts all of us, but they host all of they hold all the grants and everything for different things. So Meier employs all of us. in my department. DEFY is the coalition, so the Drug Free Youth Coalition, and that's mostly the adults, but there is some overlap, so I see how it gets confusing. Those are the adults that are working on preventing youth drug use.
Okay.
STAND is Meier's baby. STAND is Meier's youth development model, youth prevention model. So anything with the kids is STAND. STAND and the coalition also kind of fit together in that the coalition has to have all 12 sectors of the community, everyone represented, and STAND is probably the biggest asset of the coalition. So with like 200 kids, over 200 kids last year, or just about 200 kids last year, and about 160 this year, the kids, all of what they do benefits the coalition and vice versa, because the coalition is working on creating a healthy environment and STAND is working on the specific things with kids. So they're a little bit separate, but together at the same time. But STAND is the youth portion, and it's a little bit, it functions separately, but overlaps.
It's its own independent arm is what it is. And so I'm gathering that STAND is not an organization that's made up of adults. STAND itself is an organization made up of the
kids. Yeah, for sure.
So it's like to say you're a part of STAND. Well, that's not technically right, as you stated, because you're part of Meier, but STAND is a program that is started and instituted, and basically you just nurture them.
Yeah. So we kind of oversee the STAND program. We do have staff and stuff for STAND. So to answer your original question, so I was the coalition coordinator. We had a part-time STAND coordinator, and she went on maternity leave like 6 months after I started. So suddenly, like, I had been helping with STAND. That's what I was going to say. In my interview, Des was like, have you ever worked with kids? And like, back to what I said earlier, I said, oh, no. And inside I was thinking, please don't make me work with kids. I have no idea what I'm doing.
I mean, kind of. I worked at the Y.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
well,
I watched them work out, not in a creepy way. And then
make sure they didn't hurt themselves.
yes. I provided a safe place. Yes.
Yes.
So I had been helping with STAND just sort of as an assistant to the part-time STAND coordinator. And then when she went on maternity leave, it was sort of like, you're in charge. And I was like, okay. So I was doing the coalition and I was doing all of STAND, making sure that everything kept going with STAND. So I was helping out with both. And then eventually she ended up stepping down as the part-time coordinator, and Des was like, do you think we need a full-time person? And I said, yes, I do. And I said, I would like to be that person. So I took over STAND as the STAND coordinator in February of 2020.
Very cool.
The month before everything hit, which was neat. So I was prepared, I was excited to do it, and then suddenly everybody had to stay at home. Yeah. And so STAND actually sort of readjusted. We were purely substance use before then, and obviously there were huge mental health things. There were huge mental health things before, but we started to incorporate more mental health, and we shifted from our structure of what we normally do to how can we just help these kids get through this, and how can the kids help other people get through this? Because STAND is sort of both focused on helping the kids within the program, both stay healthy, make healthy decisions, become great leaders, like get to where they need to be, accomplish everything they want, and directing all of that leadership outward toward other people. So we're investing in those kids, and they're investing in others and the community. So we really focused, like we took trips dropping things off on kids' porches so that they could contribute, making surgical masks for the hospital, because they needed that. We did stickers and coffee sleeves, like trying to promote positivity and just brighten someone's day. We were trying to fill needs and be a huge support and keep kids engaged. And honestly, that was probably the everything that happened, I don't want to say the P word, everything that happened at that point sort of catapulted STAND, because they were an organization that was not, I don't want to say panicking, but still going, and trying to help other people instead of like, how can we just maintain what we're doing? We were like, let's focus this outward. And that was a huge plus for us. STAND kind of catapulted and started exponentially growing after that.
Yeah.
And so,
that was a nightmare of a time.
Yeah. It was awful to be at home for me, I panicked a little bit at first, but what I love about my job is the creativity and being able to, yes, our focus is the same. And there are different ways that people go about that, and there are traditional ways that people go, like DARE, all of those programmatic things. What I love is how can we rock the boat a little bit? Yeah. How can we look outside or step outside the box? And that's where I thrive. If I go to a job and it's the same thing every single day, I'm probably going to get bored pretty quick. But if there's an innovation that I can make, or if there's something creative that I can take on, even if it's just interacting with kids, like if we try to bring out their creativity and come up with new things, new ways to get to the same end goal, but do it more fun and do it better and do it more efficiently, all of those things. So the pandemic was a new challenge. Oh, I said it, sorry.
Yeah, we all experienced it.
Yeah, everybody knows what I'm talking about. It was a new challenge for me, but that was really exciting because kids wanted to step up during that time. They didn't have school. They were just sitting at home. So we also gave them something to cling on to. When you give kids, research shows, when you give kids an active role in their community, it builds in protection for them. Meaning that they're buffered from all of these risky behaviors. When they feel like they're needed in the community, when they have an active role, people need them, they like them, they want them, they're looking to them as leaders, they're less likely to engage in all of the substance use and boost their own mental health, all of that. So, I sort of, through that, I don't know that it was anything that I did. And all of this, I don't think it was anything that I did. Like, to this day, I still tell people, I probably shouldn't announce this on a podcast, but I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's 100% God that's working through me, I guess, or through this work. I'm just trying not to screw it up.
Yeah.
So through that, Stan really started growing to the point where we needed more help. And so I hired a Stan coordinator, and I sort of moved up. Basically, every job that I had was like a new job description that we didn't have in place because we were growing, which was neat. It was really fun to be a part of growth. So I became, what was it? It was like 4 words, the Youth Leadership Program Manager. Okay. And I hired a Stan coordinator, so I was overseeing for a while, the state contracted with me to try to grow their youth leadership program. That was fun. And then that's all I'll say about that. And then that contract was over then, and we're focusing now on, my boss, Des, got promoted to CEO, sort of spur of the moment out of nowhere, and then I was sort of handed the department and became the director at that point too. So that's sort of my my
track
journey
to where
through Meier.
You are now today.
Yes.
Okay, so as that, when I was there, that you were given the presentation amongst everybody else. I mean, it was everybody participated, right? I can't put all the faces to the names, right? But just very intrigued and interested, and to see the Stan youth kids get up there. I call them kids. Maybe they don't want to be called kids.
I call them
the
kids
youth.
Too. I've asked them.
You know,
and
I was
fine
a
with
kid once. People called me a kid. Not age discriminating here or anything. It's not derogatory anyway. But there was something that you all mentioned in there about like what people could do if they wanted to get involved in any aspect of this. Because I think when you did the presentation, it wasn't specific to Stan, right? It was just a promotion of the entire, basically a breakdown of what you've been giving me this whole time, right? Like, how do kids get involved in Stan first off? That's one question. I'm gonna ask you like three questions. First of all, how do kids get involved? And then how do adults get involved, right? And then if you want to get involved, what does that look like? I mean, you can be a member and I can do a podcast to help promote this, right? With my own, what I have and resources to be able to get this word out, or that's what I'm choosing to do, right? But there's like, how do people get involved? Who do they contact? And start with the youth. Like, if you're a parent and you're listening to this right now and you haven't heard your kid come home and talk about Stand, and you think there might be something there that's offered because you saw this podcast, who do you direct them to, Ben?
Yeah, so let me just preface, Stand is a high school program, so the kids in high school are the ones that can join Stand. However, their influence goes down to lower grades. So some of our schools, we have a Stand club in every high school in the county. So any high schooler in the county can join a Stand club. And it's as simple as probably there's someone in their school, there's an administrator or the school sponsor for Stand that has the link or the QR code for them to just fill out an application. We call it an application. It's not, we don't look through the application like, should they be a part of this? No, once you fill out the application, you're in and you're a part of the club. And we'll add you to the list and you can come to the meetings. And you can join at any point in the year too. So it's super simple for kids to get involved. There is another higher level of leadership where there's a board. So Stand is youth led from the kids. Yes, we have staff, but they're mostly there to facilitate youth leadership. So we have a board of kids from all of the schools that we have involved, and they meet monthly, and the board makes decisions like, what should we talk about with the middle schoolers this year? What kind of community service can we do as a whole county? Etc. So they sort of make some bigger decisions. That's a new level of leadership that you do. Like it's an additional application. You have to go through an interview process. You get selected for that. But to just be a part of what we're doing, just fill out an application. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
For adults, for the coalition, I would say that there's levels. If you're a parent, if you have connection with kids, which everyone does, I don't care if you don't know any, you've got kids on your block, you've got kids in the town, you pass by kids as you walk. That's who you should be influencing. So I would say the bare level is like, talk to the kids you know. And it's not like, have you heard about drugs? It's like, talk to the kids and have a relationship with them, because the more relationships that they have with positive adults, that also buffers them from risk. That also builds in protection for them. So, excuse me. So bare minimum, just do what you can with the kids that you have. We also have some people who can't come to, our coalition meetings are Wednesdays, like during lunch. We do it right across the street from Newton High School so that kids can actually walk across the street and be a part of the meeting if they can. We also have kids that drive from Sedgwick and to attend the meeting too. So I reach out to me. I don't know if you can give contact information or anything.
I'll give you contact information. We'll have it displayed right now across Ben.
Technology. Love it.
Catch this email down here
on my face.
We'll get it somewhere in here, right?
Reach out to me and would love to have you involved. We're actually looking for parents. We need parent involvement. We want your input. It's everybody's responsibility a little bit. And we know that parents, we're trying to reach parents better. We're trying to reach parents more. So having a parent on board to help us know how to do that a little bit better would be great. But if you can't come to meetings that I didn't tell you when they are exactly, we can put you on our newsletter. We can communicate with you. Like if you want to be involved somehow, we will figure out whatever level works for you. Mm-hmm. So there are community leaders that are like CEOs are really busy or can't come to those meetings specifically, but they're on our list and they're willing to help out in whatever way they can. So we still consider them coalition members. Val Gleason is probably the biggest cheerleader for us in this community. We just opened a thank you letter from her today for something that we did. Cool. She writes individual letters to any youth that she has any Stand kids that come and speak or do anything like that. My staff and I actually joked about like we should have a file for all of Val's letters because it's getting pretty thick.
That's awesome.
But she can't. She's a CEO, so she can't come to the meetings. But she loves to be involved. She loves to support. A huge part of everything that we're doing is just community support. So with our big grant with Defy, let me start with Stand. With Stand, kids having an active role and having adult support, all of that. We couldn't do it without that community support. That's why when we started advertising how we were supporting the community came and supported Stand because they saw the value in it. When you see value in kids, they can feel that. Yeah. So that's a huge portion. For adults, for the coalition, community support is absolutely everything. Like the coalition, I have a part-time like community mobilizer and myself running the coalition right now, and we can't do everything. Like we can't change by ourselves. We can't change anything. It takes the community to do it, and there will be way more buy-in from the community with everything too if we are if the community is a part of it. So yeah, whatever level you are, and don't feel like, oh, I don't know what I would be doing. Sometimes we don't know what we would be doing. So we can find a place for you. We can find a role for you. That sounds bad. There is a place for you. There is a role for you. In fact, our big federal grant that we just got for years 6 through 10, it's the last 5 years of that grant. We're really excited to have gotten it again. It actually builds in like in-kind donations, and the only way to get those in-kind donations is for people to donate their time, essentially. So we have to have people coming on board, and as we go through the years with this grant, that amount that we have to have in kind goes up every year. So we need more and more and more involvement, because the point of this grant is to essentially skyrocket coalition involvement, so that after the 10 years when the funding can't be gotten again, that sounded weird.
You're just flowing.
I'm
just
flowing, I guess.
Gangster.
Sorry, I'm a
lyrical
talker.
gangster.
You can cut me off. After 10 years, when we can't get that funding again, the coalition work will continue because there's so much community involvement. So that's the goal over the next 5 years, is to get the coalition just running with it.
Yeah. So it's self-maintained.
Yeah, self-maintained, or that the community just absolutely owns it. Kind of like one of the big programs of the coalition was the Life of an Athlete program, or the Railer Way. I know there's been stuff that's happened. Yeah. Honestly, it's not changing much of the program. The program is still doing its job. And I say program, it's really loose in that Newton High and the community, the adults, the parents, the coaches, the administrators that were involved originally with the policy part of it, they all were involved. So they had a lot of more buy-in, like kids had buy-in. It's just been more and more supported through all of this. But all of the aspects, like the student activities leadership team, the SALT teams, I'm on a tangent.
Yeah, no, keep going. Keep going. I'm listening. I'm here.
So the Railer Way is all about like basically creating a healthy environment for athletes and activities participants. Newton High started that. It started as like, let's redo the code of conduct. From there, it was like, let's create student activities leadership teams for those that are in activities and sports, so that they can help lead this charge within the school.
Create a culture.
So that's the student piece of it. The students also obeying the code of conduct. The coaches have a role in it, in like talking to their kids about substances, talking about how they can be healthy, get a lot of sleep, drink water, all of those things. And then the school has the part of I don't want to call it enforcement, but like holding healthy standards and communicating those clear standards. Parents have a part in that they need to talk to their kids. They need to sign the code of conduct every year, or go to required parents meetings.
Do the same thing. Hold your child accountable.
Yeah. Yep. And then the community does too. If you don't have kids in the school, that doesn't mean you don't have a role. You're there. You need to be there to support. Things like, this is, no, I'm not going to say that because it's off subject. I'll just go down another tangent.
Yeah.
But things like going to, actually, I guess I will say, things like going to sporting events, going to plays, even if you're not connected with the school, going to those things supports kids and gives them that role that I talked about. So all that to say, Newton High has taken that program and made it what they need. So it's a loose program, but that was a coalition thing that was started, and we're really excited that it's gotten to the point where it's just kind of continuing on. And I think that's what coalition work is supposed to do, is create environments where people are starting to own it. Yeah. And adapt it to what the community needs.
Well, and I know a tremendous amount of people who have been involved in STAN, have been involved in the coalition, who've just been involved, because I know there was a period of time when people did not, in my lifetime, where there wasn't as much emphasis placed on trying to get people off of substances. If they were on a substance, it turned into something that was more of a consequence rather than something preventative. And I've seen that evolve, and I think this in our community is like the tip of the spear, if you want my opinion. And it's just amazing how many people, like you have stated, I'm here to tell you there are a lot of people that have bought into this. Likewise, if you're listening right now, we have to replenish the troops. If you're going from year 6, and let's say I was helping year 1, I'm on year 6, and it would be nice if somebody would come along and pick up that baton and carry it on for the next 4 or 5 years. Not saying, or for people to flex. I know a lot of organizations struggle because they tap out on volunteers. It's like, well, we have volunteers to do these jobs, and then we don't consider that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road, well, we should have an entire different group of volunteers that are running them down, and you all have been very successful in being able to do that. So I just wanted to clarify my statement to say that I can attest to the fact that many, many people have been involved in this program, and it takes many, many hands to have the whole thing work. And you keep mentioning community and keep mentioning talking to the youth, whether it be through this organization or that. Just simply having the conversation. And is that really where it starts, Ben? Does it really start? Is it really that simple that statistics prove that if we're not doing, some of the things that you mentioned, and we're not as adults providing these avenues for kids because they're the kids, they can't do it for themselves, that we as a community are nurturing without doing that? We're nurturing the opposite, right? We're trying to nurture our youth to be able to move in the way that what you're representing, and the only other pathway is the opposite of that, right? Are we really at that moment in time in which, we just have to be having these conversations? Because if we're not, our children are going to wind up getting something with fentanyl and dying. This is a real possibility. The one hit and something happening to you is sadly becoming more fearful. And if people don't know about it, and they're not talking to their kids about it, and their kids aren't having conversations, is that really what it comes down to?
It can. Yeah. I think that it's a huge important piece. Like, having these conversations needs to happen. I think, let me try to remember the stat. I think that kids who hear about drugs and alcohol from their parents, if they're talking to their parents about drugs and alcohol, or if parents are talking to them, they're 50% less likely to participate in those things. Like, just having that conversation.
50%.
I believe it's 50%. I can look it up.
Well, I'm going with that. I'm even if it's 48, 45, I'm not going to crucify you to stiffs. 50% is pretty, that's a lot. Like, you got a 50-50 chance of saying, hey, I don't know what all these kids are doing, or what Johnny or JoJo or Susie or Suzanne are doing, but you guys need to, it seems to me like there might be a conversation that needs to happen here.
And it doesn't have to be like a super formal thing. You don't have to sit down at the dinner table and be like, this is why I gathered you here tonight.
Well, that's how they do it on the Andy Griffith show.
It is.
Paw.
Andy Griffith didn't have all the stuff that we have.
More misleading things from that television set that means me bad. Makes me feel bad about myself.
My boss Des always said, it's better to have 61-minute conversations than one 60-minute conversation, especially with the way that kids, like attention spans and everything. I don't want to sit down and have a 60-minute conversation with anyone. I imagine if I were a parent. I'm sorry. No.
Dang it.
This is fun. A serious conversation.
I love just razzing you.
I don't want to sit down and have a formal conversation. Kids don't want that. They're not going to receive it well. Parents don't want to do it, obviously. Yeah. So take the opportunities when you see them, I guess, is what I'm saying. When you see one of our slides at the theater, be like, hey, what do you think of, what do you think about that? What do you see at your school? Just open up those conversations and make sure that they know that you're okay talking about it. If you see something while driving, be like, hey, if they're going to a party, say, okay, do you know what to do if you get offered something like that? I was just talking to someone else in the community, and they said there's code word, like there are tools that you can give your kids as a parent to This kid's code word was, maybe I shouldn't say it. Let's say flower. If they text their parent flower, then the parent knows, okay, I need to call them and come up with an excuse for them to come home because they're in a situation they don't want to be in.
Yeah, I'm mad at you because you didn't do something at home, and I'm going to get you some ice cream.
Why didn't you take that trash out?
Yeah. You're done with your. Yeah, you didn't pick up your room.
Yeah. So I mean, those things are okay because if kids aren't in a situation or if they're in a situation where they don't want to be, give them an out. Yeah. There was a coalition member years ago that sat down at our coalition meeting and talked about the impact that saying no can have. And he said when he was younger, they were at a campfire basically with a bunch of kids, and somebody lit a doobie, I think back then, but they were passing around a doobie, a joint. And everybody was taking a hit, and it got to him, and he's like, he was watching it come to him, and he was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. There's so much, like, just feeling the pressure. No one was saying anything, but there was pressure as it was coming.
Yeah, one person at a time.
Yep. And he was saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And he had the guts to pass it on. And like, he did pass it on, but he didn't partake. He said every single person after him just passed it. They said no. So the power of giving your kids the power to say no.
Man, that is a real situation. You know, it is. I've often told my son and my daughter, you know, you might be the person that stops other people from doing things. I mean, we're not all perfect, but if there's a point in time in which you see somebody doing something that you truly believe is going to be negative for them, that it's your responsibility. It's on your conscience. Like, if you care about them, to say something to them. I don't know, you might get in trouble and people might tell you to go mind your own business, but at least your conscience is clear, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as that goes.
I will say, I don't think my parents ever sat me down or ever outright told me, you should not do drugs. These are the dangers of drugs. But there's also something to say about somehow communicating clear expectations. I think it's great if you can sit down and tell your kids that. I don't think that the culture was probably a little different back then too, because I'm apparently old. Well,
now,
yeah, the kids let me know. Although somebody told me I was 23. I was like, yes, that is correct. But I didn't need that conversation. My parents didn't. I can't remember a time where we sat down and were like, this is the impact of drugs and everything. But seeing the impact of drugs in other people's lives, and loved ones' lives, and knowing that my parents were not knowing the expectations when it came to that, I know for a fact that they would not have been okay with it. Did they have to communicate that verbally to me? I guess not. But I like making sure that those are clear, I guess, with your kids is important.
Being involved. Once again, talking.
Yeah. Just it all boils down to relationship, essentially.
Wanting to be involved.
Yeah.
All right, Ben, we're coming to the end of the program. We've talked. We will have you out on the program again, by the way. I will tell you that. There's people that I interview, and I just want to have more of a conversation with them, and I know we're up against a time limit. But something I do in all my programs is I give the guest the last word to speak directly to the hearts and minds of those listening. So you got to tell me, Ben, what do you got for everybody, my man?
Oh man, I should have thought about this a little bit better. Let me take a minute. I think it's important to, and I don't see it as much anymore. I think it's important that we all need to look outside of ourselves a little bit. I can be really selfish with my time. I can be really selfish with, time is the big one for me. But there are people that need support, and there are people that need help. And I was thinking about this last night a little bit. Like, I love working with kids, and I think, like, I'm a Christian. If you hadn't guessed already at this point in the podcast, I didn't mean to get spiritual, like Newton Bible right off.
Free.
But I think that if you look at the Bible, if you look at the life of Jesus, he just showed up. He showed up relationally in people's lives, and he showed up, let the children come to me. He loved kids. He loved youth. And I think it's important to show up. whatever that looks like for your loved ones, whatever that looks like we're also called to take care of the poor and the poor in spirit and all of those things. And I think that whatever, I think we need more of that. I think we need more people that are willing to give. And it's not even financial. Like, everybody has something to give. Everybody has relational things they can give. Everybody has time, whether they believe it or not. Everybody has, if they find it, if they look for it, they have time. And I would just encourage people to look inside themselves and look outwardly, maybe not inside themselves, look outwardly and see what needs are there that they can contribute to, even if it's just showing up.
Even today.
Mm-hmm. I think working with kids, it means so much when somebody takes time for them. Like, I don't even think that they would know that or be like, wow, he took the time to do that. It's just like, I think they're yearning for belonging and yearning for adults who care and take the time. So take the time.
Take the time. Well, thank you, Ben, for coming on the program.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, do it again.
I enjoyed this 60-minute conversation.
Well, there you have it, folks, and thanks for listening to this episode of Harvey County Talk. I was your host, Lance Gormley, and Ben Meier, who is the Program Prevention Director for Meier here in Newton, was your guest. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks.